You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Jeff Leonard. I'm with NACS, and we talk about things that relate to convenience stores and everything, whether it's inside the store or outside the store, and how customers interact in between.
And I'm John Eichberger with the Fuels Institute and NACS. And yeah, Jeff, we talk about things that power your life. 160 million Americans go to convenience store every day to buy food, buy fuel, and get them from point A to point B, and we are the source of choice.
And speaking of 160 million Americans a day, about 40 million of them are at the pump. And we'd like to spend some time today talking about what those fuels might be that we'll be seeing at the pump. So, John, we have this new market analysis that the Fuels Institute has put out related to E85, 85%. Well, it's not actually 85% ethanol, so I'll let you start by explaining all that and why you did this market analysis looking at E85 as the fuel of the future.
Yeah, Jeff, one of the things the Fuels Institute tries to do is analyze what's going on in the market, what could be going on in the market. And every forecast we've looked at and done is really showing that liquid fuels are going to be the dominant energy source for the next 20, 30 years. There's going to be other things competing and gaining market share, but overall, liquid fuels is going to have central stage. So we want to understand what the different fuel blends might be. One of the alternative fuels that's been around for quite a while is E85. And the definition of E85 is a mixture of gasoline and ethanol. And it can range from 51% ethanol to 83% ethanol. So E85 is kind of a misnomer, but that's what the market term has been. And so we wanted to understand what's the market share for that going to be. Now, this fuel can only be used in certain vehicles called flex fuel vehicles. They're calibrated, certified from an emissions perspective to run on anything from pure gasoline up to the 83% ethanol that's in the E85. And so we want to understand those drivers of those vehicles, how often are they buying E85 and what's driving them and what is the market telling us? So we went out in the market to take a look.
And E85, there's interest in E85. First off, some of the first vehicles, if not the first vehicles, ran on ethanol.
Right.
You bought it at a pharmacy, and then in the 70s we had gasohol. Mm-hmm. Right now we have 10% ethanol in pretty much all the fuel in the country. There are exceptions where people sell fuel that does not have ethanol in it, but at least 10% in most areas of the country. What are the advantages of why did E85 and above E10 take off in terms of interest in starting to look at how do you sell more?
Yeah, there's a variety of reasons why higher levels of biofuels are attractive to certain segments. One is it's renewable fuel, so your carbon intensity is a little bit lower. Your life cycle analysis, life cycle impact on the environment, depending on production processes and all those things. But for the most part, it's renewable. So it is considered to be a better for the environment option. It's also domestic. So if you think back into mid-2000s when we were really concerned about energy security, well, it's a domestic renewable resource that doesn't have to be imported from areas of the world that may not like the United States very much. So it was a combination of environment, renewable, it supports agriculture. Ethanol is produced from corn in the United States, so we're really helping out the farming community in the United States. So there's a lot of pro-America theories and feelings about biofuels in the United States, which led us to start thinking, how can we use more of it? If there is a limit of 10% for most vehicles, how do we move beyond that? And how do we allow the market to absorb more biofuels, support rural America, support energy security, support a renewable economy, and move forward in that respect?
So when the Fuels Institute looks at they look at a lot of things, not just fuels, but the vehicles, everything related to transportation fuels, mobile transportation and fuels. Give us the context, the guardrails for how you set up this study in looking at E85 as a viable fuel or what its impact would be in the coming years.
Yeah, so we're not looking to cast judgment on whether E85 is good or bad. We did a study a couple years ago on E85 where we really wanted to understand the price sensitivity of consumers who drive flex fuel vehicles and their decision to either buy gasoline or E85. And we looked at a couple hundred stores, daily station sales data to find out what was going on in the price relationship and volume relationship. When we did that first study, gas prices were about $3.50 a gallon nationwide. Well, right after that study was published, gas prices tanked. And so people started asking us, with gas prices going down, does that change the demand dynamics and the price sensitivity for E85 demand? Well, heck, we didn't know. So we just said, let's go out and ask. So we went out and asked stations and companies that we knew sold E85 if they would give us proprietary sales data. 620 stores gave us daily sales data for E85 and unleaded, price, volume, and some of them margins for 14 months. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 lines of data in my Excel spreadsheet. It was enormous. Crashed my computer every time I turned around. It was driving me nuts. But 620 stores, there are only about 3,500 stores in the United States that sell E85. So we had about a 20% market representation in that. And what we wanted to do is just analyze the data. Analyze what price is E85 being sold relative to unleaded. What is the demand of volume at those price points, and what does that tell us about the level of demand for E85 in the United States? And you take that dispassionate statistical economic analysis and you just throw it out there and say, here's what we learned. You don't say E85 is great, E85 is not great. You say, hey, here's reality. And then let's have a discussion about what this reality means to the bigger picture. But the report itself is a straight analysis of sales data, volume, price, and the relationship between unleaded and E85.
And that elasticity in terms of price, in terms of where we are today in 2017, what does this analysis show us in terms of the path forward, whether this year or the next 5 years with E85?
Well, the first question that we were asking was, is the drop in gasoline prices have a positive or negative effect on E85? There was a suspicion that as gasoline prices go down, consumer interest in E85, even if it's priced lower than gasoline, may dissipate. Now keep in mind, E85 has a lower energy content than gasoline, so you get fewer miles per gallon on E85, so E85 has to be priced lower than gasoline. In the first study, when prices are about $3.50 for unleaded, E85 averaged a price about 50 cents below gasoline. So the question was, at $2 a gallon, $2.25 a gallon, can you sell E85 for 50 cents, or do you have to? What's the sensitivity there? What we learned was we're still selling it for about 45 cents a gallon less than unleaded, so that hasn't changed. The demand for E85 actually increased from about 2.8% of unleaded volume to about 4.8% of unleaded volume. What does that mean? It could be sample bias. Could be distortion in the data. We didn't have all the same stores, all the same companies participating. We had more stores. We had a broader sample set. But what we found is from that analysis, even when gasoline prices go down, E85 sales remain fairly static. They remain pretty much right around that point they have always been. They didn't drop. They didn't go up. They went up a little bit, but you're looking at that price point, E85 is averaging just under 5% of unleaded volume at a store.
So it may not necessarily be the price for E85. There's possibly a ceiling or possibly a floor in terms of demand, but it might be more based on how people feel about the fuel itself and less about the price of the fuel.
Maybe. I think it's a combination. What this report really said is price alone does not determine how much E85 you're going to sell. So we ran some analyses on the correlation coefficient. What we found was the price of E85 relative to unleaded compared to the volume of E85 relative to unleaded, the correlation is very limited. It's there, but it's not exact. It's not precise. More to the point, we ran a trajectory analysis where we tried to identify, based upon the data we have, we ran a linear model to project that a certain price relationship, certain volumes might occur. How likely is that to happen? Absolutely not likely at all. It was almost completely unpredictable. And that made sense, because I looked at individual stores. Some stores had great discounts, modest sales. Some had minimal discounts and huge sales. It really depends on so many other environmental factors, market factors affecting the consumer mindset that price alone can't determine what the future is. And that's something that's important because a lot of people have said, if we just price E85 low enough, sales will go up. Maybe, but not necessarily. The one thing that was interesting in the sample set, and we scrubbed all identifiers from the store, so I don't know what store belongs to who. That's important because they were giving me some really proprietary data, right? What I found was the stores that had the lower unleaded volume, so the lower throughput overall, seemed to have a higher E85 sales threshold. That's on a gallon basis and on a percent of unleaded volume basis. Why? My suspicion, and this is just my own speculation, is those might be more rurally located stores where you don't have as much traffic. Maybe it's more agricultural based. A lot of the stores in the sample set I know came from the Midwest. They have an affinity to support rural America. Plus, the majority of flex fuel vehicles, about 70% or more, are trucks. Pickup trucks seem to be more readily located in rural areas. So you have a higher percentage of your population eligible to buy flex fuel vehicles. They're also more knowledgeable about the role of the agricultural community in the fuels market. And so that would make sense that you may have a slightly higher, but that's something that requires a little more study to find out what are the factors that actually lead consumers who have a choice. They don't have to buy E85. They can buy whatever they want to buy this fuel beyond price, because price alone does not determine it.
Well, I think your last point is important, looking at trucks and the larger vehicles that may have flex fuel capacity or using the flex fuel. I know in the D.C. area, you tried, or New York, or any of those larger communities where you have to park in a parking garage. Good luck with the trucks.
Right.
Your car will look different once you get it back, whether you've parked it or somebody else parked it, because it will hit something.
Yep.
So you do see smaller cars in more metropolitan areas, and it makes sense talking about the rural in terms of where that may be in terms of the greater demand with wanting E85. So what are the implications from the study that you put out for retailers and for those who are looking at flex fuel vehicles, for instance?
Well, I think it's, the study itself was a very specific analysis of data. The bigger implications come from a broader perspective, which is what the Fuels Institute tries to do. We try to bring different pieces together to help build the picture. The number of flex fuel vehicles in the country, and keep in mind, only flex fuel vehicles can run on E85. There's about 22 million. It's about 9% of the vehicle population. Automakers have been receiving a credit towards their fuel efficiency requirements for every flex fuel vehicle they produce. That credit disappears in 2019. So the incentive for automakers to continue producing a flex fuel vehicle goes away. Counter argument is the flex fuel vehicle technology is a couple $100 per car. It's not a big deal. That alone is only half the story. A vehicle that is designed to run on fuels ranging from 0 ethanol to 85% ethanol has to be certified from an emissions perspective on multiple levels of blend. That certification process for every model is extremely cumbersome and expensive. So that is a disincentive to automakers to continue producing these cars unless there's some sort of credit. The second challenge they run into is, as they try to boost efficiency, they want to do direct injection, they want to lightweight and make their engine smaller. They want to do higher compression ratio. They want to do turbo boosting. These things may not be fully compatible with the flex fuel technology. There may be complications or additional costs. That's another disincentive. And so you start thinking about, okay, we have a market now where the credit to automakers to produce flex fuel vehicles is going away. The challenges associated with making them are becoming a little bit more of a burden without that credit. Are consumers demanding flex fuel vehicles? So now we look at our report. Less than 5% of unleaded volume, E85 is equal to less than 5% of unleaded volume. That, in my mind, does not argue there's a strong consumer demand. Now, there's several reasons for that. I suggest that the vast majority of flex fuel vehicle drivers don't know it's flex fuel, and that goes to the auto dealers. They don't explain it. I'll tell you an anecdote. An individual I know who works for an ethanol company bought a vehicle that was flex fuel, asked the dealership, so what's that? When he looked at the fill tap, the dealer said, oh, don't worry about that, just put gasoline in it. Now, that ended up being a 30-minute lecture to the dealer guy about what the benefits of ethanol. But the dealers have no incentive to market these as flex fuel because there's only 3,500 stations, so you're going to tell the consumer you can buy E85, but you're going to have a hard time finding it. That just makes the sale harder, so dealers have no incentive to sell them and market it. So you don't have this driving demand. In the absence of a credit and the absence of consumer demand, automakers are not going to be producing these. A new study we'll be releasing in the spring of 2017 that is forecasting by Navigant Research the powertrains that will be sold and registered in the United States through 2025. For flex fuel vehicles, the sales in 2016 were around 8.5%. In 2025, it's going to be around 1.25%. They're going away. And so that doesn't mean the market's changing. It takes a long time to turn this market over. So flex fuel vehicles will still be in the market until around 2030s, but they're going to start going down in number. And so we're at a point where the potential market upside to E85 is on life support right now. It needs some sort of injection to encourage flex fuel vehicle production, to encourage consumer adoption and consumption, to encourage retailer investment to make the fuel available. In absence of some new incentive, the market's going to be in real big trouble.
Well, I like that the auto dealer got the 30-minute lecture about flex fuels and all that, which took away the 30 minutes that it would have been, hold on, let me check with my manager in terms of the price. So give and take a little bit. You can hang out for a half hour when you don't want to. But getting back to that and just kind of wrapping things up, when you buy a flex fuel vehicle, you can use gas, you can use a flex fuel there. Mm-hmm. So they both work just fine. The question is, what will the future look like? And we know it will be liquid, and we know it's going to be liquid for the next 20, 30 years, if not more. Right. And it will be a mix of some sort, not literally, but a mix of gasoline, ethanol, and diesel. Mm-hmm. And so what this report really does is it just takes a closer look at what that liquid fuel will look like, not necessarily placing bets, but just a closer analysis of what's going on.
Yeah, this new report on E85 is one tool to analyze the market. It is not a definitive dissertation on E85 or liquid fuels. It is a slice of one segment of the market. Now, some will argue, John, you're saying that E85 is in trouble, but we had an increase in number of stations offering E85 in the last 12 months. How do you explain that? Well, a lot of it is you've got big companies, chains, trying to move into the E15 market. E85 is the blend stock they use to produce E15. So if you're going to be inserting an E85 tank in order to produce E15, you might as well throw an E85 dispenser up too. What's the point? Why not? So that's one of the things we're seeing is an increase in E85, and the Department of Energy will report an increase. Largely, I argue, because we're seeing an increase in E15, and that may continue. Now, as you mentioned, the mix of liquid fuels, we are dealing with the issue of the automakers wanting more octane in the fuel, and that could come from a higher blend ethanol mix. We don't know yet. That might be the solution that the market adopts, in which case E85 stations might transition. They may be the first ones to transition to the new higher or mid-blend ethanol for a higher octane product to satisfy new engines. Don't know. There are a lot of opportunities. The beauty of this whole market, Jeff, is it is so dynamic, it's so fluid, and fuel retailers, I've been telling people this for years, you show them demand and a return on investment and a way to make money, they're going to jump through hoops to get there. And so all that's required is for the automaker to produce an engine, a fuel producer to produce a fuel, and a business case to be presented that makes sense, and retailers are going to figure out a way to make the two meet. And hopefully Fuels Institute will be able to provide some analysis to help smooth that analysis path so people can reach decisions that make sense for them and their customers and help the market move forward.
Well, the beauty of the Fuels Institute is it's great analysis. You bring people together, and the information's free. So tell us how we can find out more.
You just go to fuelsinstitute.org and check us out online, or from there you can contact myself or my colleagues, Donovan Woods and Amanda Applebaum, and we'll be happy to help you with anything we can do.
You've been listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. For more information, go to nacsonline.com.